Hidden in your kitchen right now might be one of nature's most powerful gut microbiome transformers. Scientists discovered this ancient fruit contains compounds so potent they trigger measurable changes in your intestinal ecosystem within hours. Yet 99% of people consume it completely wrong, destroying every benefit. When consumed correctly at the optimal time, these compounds activate your body's natural rejuvenation mechanisms by feeding a forgotten microbe that quietly keeps you young. Most people have never heard of this microbe, and their doctors certainly aren't testing for it. But here's what's interesting: every centenarian they've studied has high levels of it. The microbe's name is Akkermansia muciniphaga, and it was only discovered in 2004 by a Dutch researcher named Muriel Darien at Wageningen University. She found it living in the mucus layer of the human gut, doing something remarkable that no other bacteria could do. While most gut bacteria feed on fiber from your food, Akkermansia feeds on the mucus your intestines produce. Sounds gross, but stay with me because this is where it gets fascinating. By consuming that mucus, Akkermansia actually stimulates your body to produce more of it, creating a thicker, healthier protective barrier in your gut. It's like a gardener who prunes a plant to make it grow stronger. Now, here's why this microbe is forgotten. Most standard gut tests don't even measure it. Your doctor orders a stool test, they're looking at a few dozen common bacteria, maybe checking for pathogens, Akkermansia, not on the radar. It represents about 3 to 5% of a healthy person's gut microbiome, but in most adults over 50, that number has dropped to less than 1%. Some people have virtually none, and nobody's telling them about it. The connection to youth and longevity wasn't obvious until researchers started examining the gut microbiomes of centenarians, the people living past 100 years old. Study after study found the same pattern. These folks had Akkermansia levels 2 to 3 times higher than typical elderly adults. A 2016 study published in BMC Medicine tracked 1,560 participants across Belgium, and the researchers found that higher Akkermansia levels correlated with lower body weight, better glucose regulation, and reduced inflammation markers. The people aging well had this microbe. The people aging poorly didn't. But it gets more specific. Researchers at the University of Louvain in Belgium decided to test whether boosting Akkermansia could actually improve metabolic health. They published their findings in 2019 Inches, the journal Nutrients, and the results were striking. They gave adults over 55 a pasteurized form of Akkermansia muciniphaga daily for 3 months. No other interventions, no diet changes, no exercise programs, just the microbe. After 12 weeks, insulin sensitivity improved by 27%. C-reactive protein, a key inflammation marker, dropped by 35%. Participants lost an average of 5 pounds without trying. Their gut barrier integrity, measured through something called metabolic endotoxemia, improved significantly. What's happening here? Why does this one microbe have such powerful effects? Let me explain the mechanism, because once you understand this, everything else makes sense. Your intestinal wall is a single layer of cells, just one cell thick, separating your bloodstream from the contents of your digestive tract. That's an incredibly vulnerable barrier. To protect it, your body produces a thick mucus layer, kind of like a protective coating. This mucus contains proteins called mucins, and it's constantly being renewed. Think of it like repainting the walls of a house. The paint protects the structure underneath. Akkermansia muciniphaga lives in that mucus layer and feeds on those mucin proteins. As it digests them, your body receives signals to produce more mucus, keeping that protective barrier thick and robust. But there's more happening. When Akkermansia breaks down mucin, it produces short-chain fatty acids, specifically acetate and propionate. These compounds feed the cells lining your intestine, keeping them healthy and tightly connected. Those tight junctions between cells are critical. When they loosen, a condition called intestinal permeability, bacterial fragments and toxins leak into your bloodstream, triggering inflammation throughout your entire body. Here's another piece of the puzzle. Akkermansia stimulates the production of GLP-1, a hormone that regulates appetite and blood sugar. You've probably heard of Ozempic and similar weight loss drugs. Those work by mimicking GLP-1. Well, Akkermansia helps your body produce its own GLP-1 naturally. It also modulates your immune system through the gut-brain axis, reducing inflammatory signaling and helping your body distinguish between threats and harmless substances. A 2023 study in BMC Medicine examined what happens as we age and Akkermansia levels decline. The researchers tracked 1,500 adults over 10 years and found a clear pattern. Between ages 40 and 70, Akkermansia populations drop by an average of 40 to 60%. As levels decline, several things happen simultaneously. Intestinal permeability increases, meaning your gut barrier weakens. Inflammation markers rise, TNF-alpha, interleukin-6, C-reactive protein all tick upward. Insulin sensitivity decreases, making blood sugar harder to control. And here's what's visible on the outside. Energy drops, weight becomes harder to manage, skin loses elasticity, cognitive function subtly declines. What causes this decline? Several factors work against Akkermansia as we age. First, dietary changes. Processed foods containing emulsifiers, additives like carrageenan, polysorbate 80, carboxymethylcellulose directly damage Akkermansia populations. A study in Nature found that these emulsifiers can reduce Akkermansia by up to 70% within weeks. Second, antibiotic use. Even a single course of broad-spectrum antibiotics can wipe out 50 to 90% of your Akkermansia, and it takes months to recover, if it recovers at all. Third, chronic stress elevates cortisol, which suppresses the mucus production that Akkermansia depends on. Let me tell you about Margaret. She's 64, a retired accountant from Wisconsin. When she came to see a functional medicine practitioner 2 years ago, she was exhausted all the time, struggling with digestive issues, and had gained 30 pounds over 5 years despite eating carefully. Her doctor had run standard tests: thyroid normal, blood sugar slightly elevated but not diabetic, cholesterol a bit high. The recommendation was statins and maybe metformin soon. The functional medicine doctor ordered a comprehensive microbiome test. Margaret's Akkermansia level came back at 0.8% of her total gut bacteria. For reference, healthy levels are 3 to 5%. Her gut lining was compromised, inflammation markers were elevated, and her short-chain fatty acid production was low. She was literally missing the microbe that protects metabolic health. They put her on a 12-week protocol focused on feeding and restoring Akkermansia. The centerpiece was a specific food preparation I'll tell you about in detail. Within 3 weeks, Margaret noticed her energy improving. By week 8, she'd lost 18 pounds without restricting calories. Her bowel movements normalized. That brain fog she'd lived with for years started lifting. At 12 weeks, they retested her microbiome. Akkermansia was back up to 4.2%. Her HbA1c, a measure of long-term blood sugar control, had dropped 0.9 points. Her inflammatory markers were in the healthy range. Margaret's story isn't unique. It's the pattern researchers see when you restore this forgotten microbe. So, what's the food solution? What can actually boost Akkermansia levels in a meaningful way? The answer surprised researchers when they figured it out: pomegranate. But not just eating pomegranate seeds the way most people do. The power is in how you prepare it and which parts you use. Here's what makes pomegranate special. The fruit contains compounds called elligotannins, concentrated especially in the white pith and membranes that most people throw away. When these elligotannins reach your colon, specific gut bacteria, particularly Akkermansia, convert them into a molecule called urolithin A. This is where the magic happens. Urolithin A acts as a selective fuel source for Akkermansia muciniphaga. A groundbreaking study published in Nature Medicine in 2022 showed that urolithin A increases Akkermansia populations by 35 to 40% within 8 weeks. The researchers gave participants the equivalent of 500 milligrams of urolithin, a daily, roughly what you get from one whole pomegranate prepared correctly. The Akkermansia boom was measurable and consistent across participants. But there's more to it than just feeding Akkermansia. Urolithin A itself has remarkable properties. It triggers a cellular process called mitophagy, the cleanup and recycling of old, damaged mitochondria in your cells. Your mitochondria are the power plants of your cells, and as they age, they become less efficient and start producing harmful reactive oxygen species. Urolithin A helps your cells identify and break down these dysfunctional mitochondria, replacing them with new, efficient ones. It's cellular rejuvenation at the most fundamental level. The synergy is beautiful. Pomegranate's L-tannins feed Akkermansia. Akkermansia converts them to urolithin A. Urolithin A strengthens your gut barrier and triggers mitochondrial renewal, and a healthier gut environment allows Akkermansia to thrive even more. It's a positive feedback loop. Now, you might be thinking about supplements. There are urolithin A supplements on the market, and they work, but they cost anywhere from $60 to $200 per month. A fresh pomegranate costs $2 to $3. When you prepare it correctly, you're getting not just the L-tannins that convert to urolithin A, but also vitamin C, other polyphenols, and prebiotic fiber that supports your entire microbiome. Whole food, whole benefit. The question is preparation. How do you actually use pomegranate to maximize Akkermansia support? That's what I'm going to show you in part 2, the exact protocol, timing, measurements, and techniques that make this work. Because there's a right way and a wrong way, and the difference determines whether you're wasting your time or genuinely transforming your gut ecosystem. Let's dive into the science behind why pomegranate works so specifically for Akkermansia, because understanding this helps you use it correctly. L-tannins are large polyphenolic compounds. Think of them as complex molecules made up of linked sugar and phenol units. Your small intestine can't absorb them, they're too big. So they travel intact all the way to your colon, where your gut bacteria get to work on them. Most bacteria can't break down L-tannins. They don't have the right enzymes, but Akkermansia, muciniphaga, and a few select species can cleave these compounds apart, releasing smaller molecules called ellagic acid, which then gets further metabolized into urolithins, primarily urolithin A. Here's what's interesting. Not everyone produces urolithin A efficiently. Your ability to convert L-tannins depends on having the right gut bacteria. Studies show that about 40% of Western populations are non-producers or low producers of urolithin A because their microbiomes lack the necessary bacteria. But when you consistently consume L-tannin-rich foods like pomegranate, you create the conditions for these bacteria to colonize and thrive. Within 4 to 8 weeks, even low producers can become efficient converters. Once urolithin A forms in your colon, it gets absorbed into your bloodstream and travels throughout your body. Research published in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry in 2021 tracked urolithin A levels in blood plasma after pomegranate consumption. Peak levels occur about 8 to 12 hours after eating the fruit. The compound then activates a cellular pathway called AMPK, AMP-activated protein kinase, which acts like a metabolic master switch. AMPK activation tells your cells to burn fat for energy, improve insulin sensitivity, and trigger autophagy, that cellular cleanup process I mentioned. But the real power comes from the gut-level effects. Urolithin A doesn't just feed Akkermansia, it creates an environment where the microbe flourishes. A study from the University of Louisville compared pomegranate extract to other polyphenol-rich foods, grapeseed extract, green tea, blueberry powder. While all showed some prebiotic effects, only pomegranate consistently increased Akkermansia populations. Grapes and berries boosted other beneficial bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, which is good, but they didn't have that specific Akkermansia amplifying effect. The ellagitannin structure is unique to pomegranates, walnuts, and a few berries like raspberries, but pomegranate has the highest concentration by far. Now let's talk about how you actually prepare this to get maximum benefit. This matters more than you might think. You'll need 1 medium to large pomegranate daily. That gives you about 2 cups of arils, those jewel-like seeds inside, plus the white pith and membranes. Here's the critical part most people miss. The white pith contains 60 to 70% of the L-tannins. When you just eat the pretty red arils and throw away the rest, you're discarding most of the therapeutic compounds. Start by cutting the pomegranate into quarters, but do this in a large bowl of water. Why? The arils sink, the membrane floats, and you avoid staining everything in your kitchen with that deep red juice. Once it's quartered underwater, use your fingers to separate the arils from the white membranes. Collect both. Don't discard anything. Here's my recommended preparation. Take 1 cup of arils and about a quarter cup of the white membrane pieces. Add 1 cup of water. Blend this together on high for about 30 seconds. You'll get a thick, slightly bitter mixture. The bitterness comes from the tannins in the pith. That's what you want. If the texture bothers you, strain it through a fine mesh strainer. You'll still get most of the L-tannins in the liquid. If texture doesn't bother you, drink it unstrained for the added fiber benefit. Timing matters significantly here. Take this on an empty stomach, either first thing in the morning or at least 2 hours after your last meal of the day. Research shows that polyphenol absorption increases by about 45% when your stomach is empty versus taking it with food. Why? Food, especially protein and fat, can bind to polyphenols and reduce their availability. On an empty stomach, they move quickly through to your colon, where they can do their work. Drink your pomegranate preparation within 30 minutes of blending. Tannins start degrading once the fruit is broken open and exposed to oxygen. Fresh is always better. If you need to prep ahead, you can store separated arils in an airtight container in the refrigerator for up to 5 days. But don't juice and store. Oxidation will diminish the compounds rapidly. What if you can't get fresh pomegranate? Maybe it's not in season, or it's too expensive in your area, or you're traveling. Look for supplements that contain either urolithin A directly about 500 milligrams daily or pomegranate extract standardized to L-tannins. The label should specify at least 40% L-tannins. You'll typically take 1,000 milligrams of that extract to match what you'd get from a whole pomegranate. Brands like Timeline Nutrition and Amazentis produce pure urolithin A supplements. They work, but again, they're pricey. Here's a pro tip to amplify your results. Add 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed to your pomegranate blend. Flaxseed provides prebiotic fiber that Akkermansia loves, plus it contains lignans that also convert to beneficial compounds in your gut. The combination creates a more favorable environment for Akkermansia colonization. Just make sure you grind the flaxseed. Fresh whole flax seeds pass through your system undigested, and pre-ground flax goes rancid quickly. Let me walk you through what happens in your body over the weeks as you follow this protocol. Within 6 hours of drinking your pomegranate preparation, polyphenol absorption begins. You won't feel anything yet, but in your colon, your existing gut bacteria are starting to interact with those L-tannins. If you already have some Akkermansia present, even at low levels, they're getting their preferred food source. Days 1 through 3, you might notice some digestive changes. Some people experience slightly looser stools. That's normal. You're introducing a significant dose of polyphenols and fiber, and your microbiome is responding. This typically settles within a few days. Your gut bacteria are beginning the conversion process to urolithin A. Initial levels are low because the bacterial populations are still small. By the end of week 1, Akkermansia is starting to multiply. The doubling time for this bacteria is about 12 to 16 hours when conditions are favorable. So, if you started with low levels, you're seeing exponential growth. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. You probably won't notice much externally yet, but metabolically, things are shifting. Weeks 2 through 4 are when measurable changes occur. The thickness of your intestinal mucus layer is increasing. Research using specialized imaging techniques shows this mucus layer can increase by 30 to 40% during this period. Your gut barrier function improves. Those tight junctions between intestinal cells are strengthening, reducing permeability. Blood tests during this phase typically show decreasing inflammation markers. C-reactive protein starts dropping, TNF-alpha levels come down. By weeks 4 through 8, systemic benefits emerge. This is when people start noticing real changes. Energy levels improve not in a stimulant way, but in a sustainable, I actually feel rested in the morning way. Blood sugar control gets better. If you're tracking fasting, glucose, or HbA1c, you'll see improvements. Many people lose weight during this phase without changing anything else about their diet. Why? Better gut barrier function means less inflammatory signaling, which means less insulin resistance, which means more efficient fat metabolism. At 8 weeks and beyond, Akkermansia populations stabilize at their new higher levels. Testing at this point typically shows Akkermansia representing 3 to 5% of your total gut microbiome healthy range. The benefits you've gained become your new baseline. This isn't a temporary boost that disappears when you stop. As long as you continue providing the right conditions, Akkermansia maintains its presence. Let me tell you about James. He's 58, works in IT, lives in Oregon. When he started this protocol, he was skeptical. He'd tried probiotics before with no noticeable effect, but his wife convinced him to give pomegranate a real shot for 2 months. He committed to one pomegranate daily, prepared the way I just described, taken every morning before breakfast. Week 3, he mentioned to his wife that he didn't need his afternoon coffee anymore. He just wasn't hitting that 3 p.m. energy crash. By week 6, his pants were looser. He stepped on the scale down 9 pounds. He hadn't changed his exercise routine or consciously restricted food. Week 8, he'd lost 12 pounds total. His chronic heartburn, something he'd dealt with for years, was gone. He felt clear-headed in a way he couldn't quite articulate. His wife said he seemed less irritable. James got curious and ordered a microbiome test at week 10. His Akkermansia level was 4.7%. He had no baseline for comparison, but the lab marked it as optimal range. He's now 6 months in, maintaining the protocol, and he says it's the single most impactful health intervention he's ever done. Now, to maximize your results, there are some supporting practices worth mentioning. First, reduce your exposure to emulsifiers. These are additives in processed foods that help mix oil and water. Read ingredient labels. If you see carrageenan, polysorbate 80, carboxymethylcellulose, or sodium stearoyl lactylate, that food is working against your Akkermansia. These compounds directly damage the mucus layer and can reduce Akkermansia populations by 30 to 50%, according to research from Georgia State University. Second, consider occasional fasting windows. You don't need to do anything extreme, but twice a week, try extending your overnight fast to 16 hours. So if you finish dinner at 7 p.m., don't eat breakfast until 11 a.m. During fasting periods, Akkermansia thrives because your body increases mucus production as a protective response. Studies show these intermittent fasting windows can boost Akkermansia by an additional 20 to 30%. Third, include other prebiotic fibers in your diet. Chicory root, Jerusalem artichoke, and resistant starch from cooled potatoes or green bananas all support Akkermansia. You don't need massive amounts. 2 to 3 servings per week makes a difference. Fourth, minimize artificial sweeteners. Sucralose, aspartame, and saccharin have been shown to reduce Akkermansia populations by 30 to 50%. If you need sweetness, use small amounts of raw honey or monk fruit instead. If you want to track your progress objectively, consider getting a microbiome test. Companies like Viome, Thorne, and Ombre offer consumer tests that specifically measure Akkermansia levels. They range from $150 to $300. You test before starting the protocol, then retest at 8 to 12 weeks to see your improvement. It's not necessary, but some people find the data motivating. What should you track subjectively? Pay attention to your energy levels throughout the day. Notice your bowel movement regularity and quality. Track your waist circumference, take measurements at your navel, not your belt line. Watch for changes in skin clarity and elasticity. Monitor your hunger patterns. Are you less driven by cravings? These are the outward signs of internal microbiome shifts. Now, let's talk safety and who needs to be cautious with this protocol. Pomegranate as a whole food has been consumed safely for thousands of years. There's no toxicity concern with the amounts I'm recommending, but there are some specific interactions and contraindications you should know about. If you're taking blood pressure medication, listen carefully. Pomegranate has ACE inhibitor-like effects. It can lower blood pressure by 5 to 12 points systolic. That's usually beneficial, but if you're already on medication that lowers blood pressure, lisinopril, losartan, amlodipine, the combination might drop your pressure too much. You could experience dizziness or lightheadedness. Start with half a pomegranate and monitor your blood pressure. Talk with your doctor about potentially adjusting your medication dose as your blood pressure improves naturally. For anyone taking blood thinners like warfarin, be aware that the white pith of pomegranate contains vitamin K, which can interfere with warfarin's effectiveness. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough to potentially affect your INR levels. If you're on warfarin, check with your doctor before starting this protocol. You might need more frequent INR monitoring for the first month. If you're taking statin medications for cholesterol, there's a potential interaction. Pomegranate juice can inhibit certain liver enzymes that break down statins, potentially increasing statin levels in your blood. This isn't necessarily dangerous, but it could increase the risk of side effects like muscle pain. Again, discuss with your prescribing doctor. They might want to monitor your CK levels or adjust your statin dose. For people with sensitive digestive systems, IBS, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis start slowly. The high tannin content can be irritating if your gut lining is compromised. Begin with half a pomegranate for the first week, just the arils without the pith. See how you tolerate it. Gradually add the pith in small amounts. Most people find that as their gut barrier heals, they can handle the full preparation without issues. Allergies to pomegranate are rare but possible. If you have birch pollen allergy, there's some cross-reactivity. Try a small amount first, just a quarter cup of arils, and wait 24 hours to make sure you don't develop any symptoms. For pregnant or breastfeeding women, pomegranate as a food is perfectly safe. Women have been eating it throughout pregnancy for millennia, but concentrated pomegranate extracts or urolithin A supplements haven't been studied adequately during pregnancy. Stick with whole fruit if you're pregnant, and keep it to 1 pomegranate per day maximum. Here's the bigger picture. We're learning that gut health is foundational to virtually every aspect of human health. Your microbiome influences your metabolism, your immune system, your brain chemistry, your hormone balance, even your risk for chronic diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's. And within that complex ecosystem, certain keystone species have outsized importance. Akkermansia muciniphaga is one of those keystone species. Conventional medicine is slowly catching up, but right now, your doctor probably isn't thinking about Akkermansia when you come in with weight gain, prediabetes, chronic inflammation, or fatigue. They're reaching for medications that manage symptoms. Metformin for blood sugar, statins for cholesterol, maybe a GLP-1 agonist for weight loss at $200 per week. These drugs have their place, but they don't address the root cause, a compromised gut barrier and a depleted microbiome. What I'm showing you is a food-based intervention that costs $2 to $3 per day and addresses multiple systems simultaneously. You're not just targeting blood sugar or cholesterol or weight. You're restoring the microbial ecology that regulates all of these things naturally. It's elegant, it's accessible, and for many people, it's transformative. The research is robust. We've got over 8 years of human studies showing consistent benefits. We understand the mechanisms. We can measure the outcomes. This isn't fringe science or wishful thinking. This is peer-reviewed, published research from institutions like the University of Louvain, the NIH, Stanford, and dozens of others. Your body has an incredible capacity to heal and regenerate when you provide the right conditions. For decades, you've probably had declining Akkermansia levels without knowing it, and that decline contributed to metabolic dysfunction, inflammation, and accelerated aging. But that trajectory isn't fixed. You can reverse it. You can restore what's been lost. The transformation begins with 1 pomegranate, prepared correctly, consumed consistently. The research is clear. The benefits are documented across multiple studies spanning years. Your forgotten microbe is waiting to be restored. It's sitting there in your gut at low levels, ready to flourish if you feed it what it needs. Here's my challenge to you. Tonight, tomorrow morning, this week, commit to trying this for 8 weeks. Buy a pomegranate. Prepare it the way I described. Take it on an empty stomach. Pay attention to how your body responds. Notice your energy in that second and third week. Notice your digestion. Notice your mental clarity. Track your waste measurement if you want objective data. This isn't just about a single microbe. It's about taking control of your metabolic health through informed, research-backed action. It's about recognizing that food is information, and the right foods can literally reprogram your biology at the microbial level. The science is here. The protocol is simple. The choice is yours. Thank you for watching. If this information was valuable, let me know in the comments. Share this with someone who's struggling with weight, energy, or metabolic issues. And subscribe for more evidence-based health content that cuts through the noise and gives you actionable protocols you can start today.